Welcome to Movie Cap channel. What you are watching is a guy named Max and his gang. They are constantly controlling what is happening in the school. Max and his friends are constantly belittling his peers at school, taking advantage of their weaknesses and trying to extort money from them. At the moment, they are looking for the next victim. Suddenly, Max sees Jimmy, who looks fat and very weak, on the sidewalk, and continues to abuse him. Jimmy is a very easy-going and compassionate guy who thinks he's very weak, pretending to be fat. He only had 2 friends at school who didn't hate him for being fat, and they, like Jimmy, were victims of the violent Max. When Bully came home from school, his mother had baked his favorite cookies for his son. The mother asks the bully not to make noise in his room, because his father is just relaxing in his room after returning from his evening shift. Jimmy's mother worries about him when she sees his depressed mood. Jimmy is not used to telling his mother about his problems. Instead, he talks to friends who respect him on his MacBook. In the evening, Jimmy notices that his father is waiting for the evening shift again, but his father realizes that he needs to spend as much time with his son as possible, and he tries to have an open conversation with him, seeing that his son is already an adult. Jimmy's father wonders if he has a daughter who likes his son, and Jimmy admits that while he does like someone, no one likes him because he's fat. Realizing that his father is late for work, he shows his son where there is a sweet that will help him lose weight. The next morning, as Jimmy heads to school, his friends show up around him and tease Jimmy with their childish pranks. Jimmy and his friends are blocked by Max, a bully who demands $100 from Jimmy to leave him alone. Since Jimmy doesn't have that kind of money, he sits back and waits for them to calm down. Soon, classes start at the school, and during the class, Jimmy witnesses his close friend being assaulted by the bully Max. Jimmy finds his friend crying in the hallway after school and tries to comfort him. She knows what will cheer her friend up and takes her to the school cafeteria and treats her to a bunch of food. When Jimmy is angry or depressed, he feels better when he eats, and it has always helped him. While they are eating, Jimmy's friend notices a girl who can't take her eyes off Jimmy. At this moment, Max, who has kicked the romance in the waist, sits down next to Jimmy and he asks Jimmy to lend him $100. Jimmy says he doesn't owe him anything, but Musk is rude to him again and demands the money. A nearby student, who witnessed the injustice, urges Max not to make any noise here and asks him to leave Jimmy alone. The bully gets mad at Max and tells him to shut up, but he's not afraid of Max's pop because he has a black bodyguard who will for Max. Max realizes that this time the situation will not be resolved in his favor and leaves. Realizing that the situation is quickly resolved, Jimmy asks the black Barzangi to become his bodyguard, but the Barzangi refuses his offer, saying that he will not work for him for free. Jimmy is walking home after school when Max stops him and demands money again. Jimmy says he doesn't owe him any money, but his response angers Max. Max insults Jimmy and begins to beat him viciously. The noise of the fight disturbs an elderly man who lives nearby, and he steps outside and forces the bully to stop. Max adjusts the pair from there to make sure there is no problem. The old man helps Jimmy up, tells him that his wound is deep, and invites him to treat it at his house. Jimmy enters the old man's house and finds that he used to be a famous boxer. The old man introduces himself as Parn Jackson and admits that he used to be a famous boxer. After Jackson stops the bleeding from Jimmy's head, he advises him to see a doctor because the wound is quite deep. Jackson takes pity on Boy and tells him that he needs to protect himself, or this injury might just be the beginning for him. Jackson tells Jimmy that he can help him defend himself and warns him that he has a lot of hard work ahead of him. Jimmy says he can handle it all and asks him to teach him self-defense. Jackson prefers to get the consent of the child's parents before taking the child, and he brings Jimmy home with him. Jimmy's mother is horrified to see the injury on his face. Jackson says he saw him outside his house when bullies were fighting. He also concludes by saying that Jimmy wants to learn self-defense and that he can teach him that. However, Jimmy's father tells him it's their problem and follows him away. The next day, the same thing happens to Jimmy, and his parents take him to Jackson's house and take him up on his offer. Jackson takes them to a Bosque Hall where he introduces himself to his dear friend Manny. Manny is currently one of the leading boxing trainers. Jackson asks him to teach Jimmy self-defense. Manny reluctantly agrees, but insists that it would be too painful for Jimmy. Jackson realizes what he's up to, and he assures Jimmy that he'll be patient. Now Jimmy's parents could only wish their son patience. The next day, Jackson brings Jimmy to the boxing gym, where Jimmy begins special boxing training. Manny thinks Jimmy has an advantage over the others because he weighs more than him. This, in turn, means that Jimmy has great power. Manny shows him how to put that power to good use and tells him that the super heavyweights used to be the real pro boxing stars. They always had cheeseburgers at home and they tried to bulk up every time. Jackson listens to her and interrupts her every time she exaggerates. Jackson gives him a glove and teaches him different punches. In the evening, Jackson escorts a very tired Jimmy home and offers him a temporary escape from the bullies currently harassing him. Jackson asks the thugs to tell him that he can double their money after 2 risks, while they leave Jimmy alone. In the meantime, Jackson advises Jimmy to train in boxing and build up the strength to fight those bullies. The next morning, Jimmy is very sore from all the fat, and he tells his mother about it. His mother says that it is temporary and gives him an ointment to relieve the pain. Jimmy's injuries don't stop him from going to school in the morning, and he keeps going even though his body is in a lot of pain after yesterday's training. He meets a friend on the road and does not tell him that he is boxing. A friend asks him out on a date with a girl he has a crush on, but Jimmy doesn't realize something else is bothering him at the moment. Suddenly, Max and his accomplices appear there and demand money from Jimmy again. Jimmy asks Max to wait 2 weeks, during which time he can work extra hours after school to double his debt. Musk believes that what he says is true and he warns that if he jokes with him, there will be dire consequences. So the thugs leave Jimmy alone temporarily, and Jimmy goes to boxing training. Jimmy boxing is having a hard time training and is starting to come up with all kinds of excuses to give up. His relatives, who are aware of his boxing, believe that he can do it and encourage him. Reminding her that her deadline at school is coming up, Max bothers her again. Then Jimmy begins to understand that the only way to get rid of the bullies is through hard work and he must find strength in himself without giving up. Jimmy is now more responsible for his training and tries to ride his bike to the gym instead of getting into the car ready to pick him up. He constantly works on himself and tries to become stronger. In doing so, he learns different tricks from the professional boxers practicing there and improves his skills more and more. He reveals to his friend that he is doing boxing, who until now thought he was actually working somewhere, and he is proud to hear this. Unexpectedly, they are joined by Adriana, who previously showed interest in Jimmy. She admits that she likes Jimmy and reveals that she can go to a dinner party with him. Excited by the unexpected situation, Jimmy invites her to a youth party. Jimmy's parents are impressed when they hear that he has a date after seeing Jimmy looking out of sorts that evening. Her father is proud of her for her masculine job, and when she arrives at his home in Adria, her parents escort her. Jimmy and Adriana arrive at a youth party and are greeted inside by Adriana's friend. Adriana's friend offers them a glass of beer and hints that there is a room inside for them to use if they decide to. They get tired of the noise inside and go outside for fresh air. They're intimate outside, and Adriana notices that he's a little lighter than before. Jimmy promises to tell her what Boo's secret is tomorrow and arranges to meet her after school. The next day, Jimmy tells Jackson that he will come early to pick her up because he promised to take Adriana to boxing training as well. Adriana realizes that Jimmy is practicing boxing when they come to the boxing gym. He goes in and meets the coaches, and he thinks boxing is only for boys. But Coach Manny can't agree because there are female boxers out there. He knocks out his male opponent in the ring with a single punch in front of Adriana. Adriana is delighted to see this and is convinced that women can also do boxing. Jimmy's tomorrow begins with Adriana reading the school text messages she wrote him. Even though it's Sunday off, Jimmy goes back to the boxing gym, where he learns new ways to put his opponent at a disadvantage in a fight. Max finally informs her that her deadline is over and agrees to meet her after school. After school, Jimmy comes to Max and Max demands that he pay him back 3 times, not 2 times. Jimmy challenges him to a fight, saying that he doesn't owe him anything. Max accepts the invitation of Jimmy, who dares to tell him this, and the fight begins on Max's initiative. Jimmy's friends encourage him to stand up, and Jimmy finds the strength to continue the fight. He hits Max with various techniques and he is stunned. Eventually, Jimmy tackles Max to the ground and demands that he leave him and the others alone. Her friends around her support her and soon their fight spreads on social networks. Jackson and Manny are proud of him after watching their fight. In the end, Jimmy's parents are proud of what he has done, and Jimmy is respected by everyone at school for his work.